The movie begins right as Frieza destroys Bardock and planet Vegeta. Nearby, a small group of Frieza soldiers led by Frieza's brother Cooler jealously watches on at planet Vegeta's destruction. In the present day on Earth, Goku plans a camping trip with Gohan, Krillin, and Oolong, and per usual, Chi-Chi is entirely against it. Elsewhere in the universe, Cooler is informed of his brother's death by Goku, and decides to set a course to Earth to kill him for killing part of his family. On Earth, everyone is enjoying the camping trip until Cooler's men take down Krillin and Gohan. Goku appears and the men immediately set their sights on and begin fighting him. Cooler, who Goku mistakes for Frieza, then appears and blasts Goku and Gohan down a waterfall, instructing his men to hunt them down. Gohan and Goku hide inside of a nearby cave while Cooler's men blast away the forest. The cave collapses and Krillin and the others find and rescue Goku and Gohan. Gohan and Icarus set off to Korin's tower for some Senzu beans, which he gets no problem, along with a spare one given by Yajirobe. On the way back, Cooler's men blast Icarus down and begin fighting Gohan, until being stopped by Piccolo, who takes the fight from there. Eventually, Cooler steps in and blasts through Piccolo as Salza burns the bag of Senzu beans, causing Gohan to use his spare one to give to Goku. As Salza senses a power level that breaks his scouter, Goku then appears before Cooler steps in and blasts Piccolo right in front of Goku. A fight between Goku and Cooler then begins, as he gloats about how he's superior to his brother. At the climax of the fight, Cooler then transforms into his final form, which might I say is probably the best designed antagonist across everything thus far, and proceeds to beat the shit out of Goku. Once he's knocked down, Cooler begins his plan for world destruction as a rage-filled Goku, for the first time proper in these movies, finally transforms into a Super Saiyan. Cooler unleashes a world-destroying supernova on him, which Goku barely manages to throw back at him. This causes Cooler to be thrown into the literal sun as he finally realizes the Saiyan baby he watched leave planet Vegeta was actually Goku. All of this supposedly kills Cooler. An exhausted Goku wakes up as Salza rises from the ground, but is quickly killed by an off-screen Piccolo. The movie ends with Piccolo drinking water from a waterfall and look, at least no one's laughing this time around. Not counting specials, Cooler is by far the best antagonist out of any of these movies thus far. But does that mean he's necessarily great in general? Well, from what I've heard from people online, there seems to be a generally mixed opinion on Cooler as a character. Some say he's just a retread of Frieza with the same transformations and abilities, and some say he offers more to the table with his motives, design, and dialogue. I personally lean more to the positive side for this, as while I do think he still has a bit of Frieza inside of him, he also still delivers on giving us a good written and overall entertaining antagonist. The animation, I think, is also improved, shown mainly through the more action-heavy scenes like the Super Saiyan transformation or Cooler's supernova. Other than that, however, there weren't many improvements done from the previous film, but still improvements nonetheless. As for the story, I thought it was cool tying in Cooler's backstory to the destruction of planet Vegeta, which gives him another reason to be better than Frieza. Also, we don't have a use or a motive for the Dragon Balls this time around, so bonus points for not continuing that trope. The pacing was also surprisingly improved upon as well. The fight with Goku and Cooler especially shows that, as the fight doesn't seem to drag on too long and become boring. The fight scenes in general, I say, are noticeably improved across the board. I don't know if it's the setting, the somewhat improved animation, or the coloring, but something about these fights just feel much more satisfying than before. And the score. We're back to the American soundtrack, meaning we have to listen to hard rock and metal again. That's not much of a bad thing though, as looking back on it, these kind of soundtracks fit these Cooler movies much more than they do Lord Slugs. Negatives I have mainly do consist of the soundtrack. Despite hard rock and metal being a more fit choice for this kind of movie, the fact there was literally no piece of Bruce Faulconer DBZ music in here started to annoy me towards the end. There's not a single piece of music in this movie that resembles anything Bruce Faulconer could have made. But then again, I guess that's 2002 for you. In conclusion, Cooler's Revenge gets a 7 out of 10. The soundtrack being the way it is arguably the movie's biggest flaw, while everything else, especially the antagonist, is noticeably improved across the board. The movie begins with New Namek experiencing a supposed eclipse, which turns out to be a morphing ship that attaches itself to the planet, causing destruction. Meanwhile, Dende, now Guardian of the Earth, pleads for Goku's help to save New Namek, while him, Gohan, Krillin, and other expected side characters just so happen to be heading towards the planet. The gang notices the ship they assume to be a planet attached to New Namek, and arrive to see the Namekians under slave control from an army of robots, under the control of none other than Cooler, now in an even more badass metal form. He explains to everyone that after he was supposedly killed by the sun, the power of the Big Yeti Star was able to revive him and give him his metal form. Goku and Cooler then begin a rematch as Master Roshi, Yajirobe, and Oolong are then taken away by the robots, with Gohan and Krillin following suit. As Goku and Cooler's fight goes on, it's eventually revealed that Cooler somehow knows instant transmission, and is even able to take Goku out mid-transmission thanks to his increased speed. Goku then goes Super Saiyan as Piccolo takes care of the remaining robots before going off to the Big Yeti Star. Goku and Cooler continue fighting with the latter getting his arm taken off and regenerated. As Cooler is about to finish him off, Vegeta steps in and goes Super Saiyan and okay, how the fuck did it take 7 movies for him to finally come in? The two Saiyans continue fighting Cooler and are able to blast his robotic body into nothing, before being introduced to an entire damn army of them. The army starts rushing towards the two as we see one of my favorite shots from any of these movies period, before suddenly finding themselves in the Big Yeti Star. Cooler, as a disembodied head, explains how the Big Yeti Star was born and how his consciousness was transferred into it. As the star gets closer to destroying New Namek, Goku and Vegeta unconsciously give all their energy to it, overloading the system and freeing the two. Cooler then gives his disembodied head a wired body but is quickly killed by a blast from Goku, thus destroying the Big Yeti Star. The two then crash land back on New Namek and the movie ends with Vegeta heading off the planet in a Saiyan space pod. Okay, now how the fuck did he get that? So Cooler has a bit more going for him this time around, but also not at the same time. He may have a simple but badass design, and his powers may be increased by a lot, but other than that, he's largely the same as a character. If anything, he lost some of what made him special, as he's no longer motivated to be better than Frieza. He basically just invades New Namek for the sake of invading New Namek. Overall, Cooler as a character was dumbed down in this movie, and is much less entertaining than before, other than his design and fight scenes. The animation, though, is also improved from the first one, evident through the abundance of the signature fast Super Saiyan action, now slightly increased with the presence of Vegeta. The new setting makes the colors pop out a bit more, the movement's fluid, there's really not much to be said about the animation other than it's at its best across all movies covered so far, which from this point on will go without saying for the future. As for the story, from the minute Dende appeared on screen, I knew something was off about this movie. But then it just gets worse once Vegeta shows up. Like, it's cool he's finally showing up in the movies, but how and why? Inconsistencies like this honestly distracted me a little bit during my first viewing. I know these movies have done a really good job setting themselves in a time period that makes sense for its characters and world, but this movie is arguably the worst of them all in that regard. Like, if Dende is Earth's guardian, where's future Trunks? Why can't Gohan go Super Saiyan? Why can't Goku and Vegeta go Super Saiyan 2? Oh, and you know, they have days until the Cell games and they're just dicking around in space. Also, this movie completely wasted Gohan and Krillin. They are relegated to side characters in the Dragon Ball movie. Krillin, I can kinda understand, but you cannot just do that to Gohan. What's even worse is that this wouldn't be the last time they even did this. Okay, taking the timeline out of the picture, is this a good story? Not really. Largely thanks to the pacing. Good god, man. For this whole thing being less than 45 minutes long, everything went by so fast. Maybe a bit too fast. The action scenes were pretty much the only scenes in the entire movie that felt like they didn't go on for a minute or less. Yeah, the stories are at their messiest so far, but what about the score? With the American score, I was expecting the same kind of music heard in the last movie, but was actually pleasantly surprised to find out that there's an actual score in this movie, rather than a soundtrack. And get this, it's actually good. No oversaturation of hard rock and metal, but rock is still the main type of music heard in here. Like through and through, it's still Bruce Faulconer's music in its entirety. Not a single piece of lyrical music in here. However, that's one of the only positives I can give this movie, as Return of Cooler gets a 4 out of 10. The score, my biggest complaint from the first movie, has been remedied, while everything else is either the same or significantly dumbed down for this one, such as the storytelling and main antagonist.